When my son stopped calling me Ma, I told myself it was nothing. I told myself people change. Life gets busy. Marriage brings new habits. But deep inside, something quietly broke. I remember the first time it happened. He called me by my name. Not Ma. Just my name, like I was someone distant. I smiled that day. I always smile when something hurts. It's an old habit I learned early in life. I raised him alone. There was no one else. No husband. No family helping hand. Just me. And a small boy holding my finger as we crossed the road. I never thought the hardest part of motherhood would come after he grew up. I thought once he was married, settled, and happy, my heart would finally rest. I thought I would sit quietly, proud and peaceful. Instead, I found myself learning how to be forgotten. This is not a story about anger. I was never angry. It is a story about silence, about watching love slowly move away, about learning where I truly stood in my own child's life. I want to tell you this slowly, because stories like this should never be rushed. I became a mother at 24. Too young, people said. Too fragile. His father left before my son learned to walk. One morning, he packed a small bag. He said he needed space. He never came back. I remember standing in the doorway that day. My son was asleep in my arms. His breath was warm against my chest. I whispered, "It's just you and me now." And I meant it. Life became simple but heavy. I worked small jobs, cleaned houses, folded clothes late at night. Every dollar mattered. Every hour mattered. But every tired bone in my body softened the moment my son smiled. He was a gentle child, quiet, observant. He would sit beside me while I cooked, asking small questions. Why does the rice steam? Why does the rain sound sad? I told him everything I knew. And when I didn't know, I made something up that sounded kind. At night, we shared one bed. I would tell him stories in the dark. Stories about brave boys. Stories about mothers who never left. I didn't know then that I was planting memories he might one day forget. As he grew older, I grew quieter. I stopped buying new clothes. I stopped dreaming about anything for myself. Every plan I made had his name in it. School fees, books, shoes. When he won a small award in school, I cried in the audience. Not loudly, just enough to feel proud. When he graduated, I stood in the back, holding my purse tightly. He waved at me. That wave carried my entire life inside it. People told me, "You did a good job." I believed them. Then he met her. She was polite, soft-spoken, always smiling. I welcomed her with open arms. I truly did. I cooked her favorite food, once I learned what she liked. I made space in my home, in my heart. I told myself, this is how families grow. I didn't notice the change at first. It came gently, like evening light fading from a room. He started calling less, visiting less. When I spoke, he listened but not fully. His eyes drifted. His phone lit up. Still, I stayed silent. I didn't want to be that mother, the one people whisper about, the one who can't let go. I told myself love does not demand. It waits. But waiting has a sound. It sounds like a quiet house, like a phone that doesn't ring, like birthdays remembered late. And one day, I realized something had changed forever. Not with a fight, not with harsh words, but with one small sentence. Please understand, things are different now. That was the day I learned. I was no longer at the center of his life. After his marriage, the house felt different. Not empty, just rearranged. The chair he used to sit on stayed pushed in. His shoes were no longer by the door. Even the air felt quieter, like it was holding its breath. At first, I told myself this was normal. Children grow up. They leave. That is the natural order of life. I reminded myself of this every morning as I made tea for one. I used to make 2 cups without thinking. One for him, one for me. Now, my hands had to learn a new habit. He still visited sometimes, mostly on festivals, sometimes on Sundays if his schedule allowed. He would come in with a smile, kiss my forehead quickly, then sit down and check his phone. I would watch him quietly. I didn't want to interrupt his happiness. I didn't want to sound needy. So I spoke less and listened more. When I asked about his work, he answered briefly. When I asked about his wife, he smiled politely. She's fine, he would say. Fine is a small word. It holds very little. His wife was kind, but distant. She greeted me with respect. Never rude. Never warm either. I told myself not everyone shows love the same way. Still, there were moments. Small moments that stayed with me. She rearranged my kitchen without asking. Moved things I had placed the same way for years. When I cooked, she would say, "Oh, he doesn't eat that much oil now." When I served food, she would say, "He's trying to eat light." I nodded. I adjusted. I always adjusted. I told myself love means making room. What hurt wasn't what she said. It was how quickly my son agreed. He no longer looked at me for approval. He looked at her. If she said it was time to leave, he stood up. If she said they were busy, he apologized. Once, I asked him to stay for dinner. Just 1 extra hour. He hesitated, then said, "We already have plans." Plans. I watched them walk out together. Their backs turned, matching steps. I stayed at the door long after closed. Nights became the hardest. During the day, I stayed busy. Cleaning. Cooking. Organizing drawers that didn't need organizing. But at night, memories grew loud. I remembered holding his hand on his first day of school. I remembered sitting beside him when he was sick, counting his breaths. I wondered when that closeness slipped away. I wondered if I missed a moment. Sometimes he forgot to call. Days passed. Then weeks. When I called him, he answered politely. "Yes, Ma." Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "I missed you." Just polite. I told myself not to read into it. Older women are often told they imagine things, that they feel too much. So I swallowed my feelings like bitter medicine. One afternoon, I decided to visit him. I didn't announce it. I wanted it to be a surprise. I carried homemade sweets, the kind he loved as a child. When he opened the door, he looked shocked. "Ma, you should have called." His wife smiled, but her eyes searched the room, as if checking for something out of place. I sat on the edge of a sofa, unsure of where I belonged. The house was beautiful, neat, quiet, but it didn't feel like my son lived there. It felt like I was a guest. I tried to talk about small things. The weather, a neighbor's wedding. They listened, but their attention drifted. After a while, his wife said, "We were just about to go out." My son looked at her, then at me. "I can drop you home," he said. "Drop me home. Not stay. Not talk. Just drop." I nodded. In the car, we sat mostly silent. I watched the road through the window. Familiar streets passed by. When we reached my house, he didn't turn off the engine. "Take care, Ma," he said. I stepped out, closed the door. The car drove away before I reached the gate. That night, I cried for the first time in years. Not loudly, just quietly into my pillow. I wasn't angry. I was confused. I kept asking myself one question. When did I become optional? I started blaming myself. Maybe I held him too close. Maybe I loved him too much. People often say a mother should not make her child her whole world. But when you raise a child alone, that child is your world. I wondered if that was my mistake. Days turned into months. I learned to expect less. That way, disappointment hurt less. I stopped calling first. I waited. Sometimes the phone stayed silent. On his birthday, I sent a long message. He replied with a short thank you. On my birthday, he forgot. He remembered 2 days later. "I'm sorry, things have been busy." Busy. That word again. I began to feel invisible, like a chapter already read and closed. And yet, I still loved him the same. Love doesn't reduce itself easily. It stays, even when it's not returned the same way. I didn't know then that something bigger was coming. Something that would finally force me to see the truth. As time passed, I noticed something changing inside me. It wasn't anger. It wasn't jealousy. It was a quiet shrinking. I began choosing my words carefully, even when I spoke to my own son. I didn't want to say the wrong thing. I didn't want to sound like a burden. Before every call, I practiced in my head. I told myself, keep it short. Keep it light. Are you eating well? How is work? Is everything okay? I never asked, do you miss me? Because I was afraid of the answer. Visits became fewer. When they did come, it felt planned. Timed. Like an appointment. They stayed for an hour. Sometimes less. His wife would check the clock gently. He would notice and stand up right away. I watched this pattern repeat. And each time, something inside me sank a little lower. One day, during a festival, I cooked everything myself. His favorite dishes. The ones he used to request weeks in advance. I woke up early. My knees hurt, but I ignored it. Cooking made me feel useful. Needed. When they arrived, the house filled with voices again. For a moment, I felt alive. We sat at the table. I served him first, as I always had. He smiled politely. But his wife said, he doesn't eat sweets anymore. I froze for a second. I looked at my son. He nodded. Yes, Ma. Doctor said, no sugar. I moved the plate away quietly. No one noticed how my hands trembled. After lunch, they sat on their phones. I cleared the plates alone. The sink filled with water and silence. I stood there longer than needed, just to feel busy. From the kitchen, I could hear them laughing softly. Not with me. Around me. Later, I tried to talk to my son alone. Just for a minute. I asked him if everything was okay between us. He looked surprised. Of course, Ma. Why are you asking? I searched his face for honesty. You don't come as often, I said gently. He sighed. Life is busy now. You should understand. I nodded. I always nodded. That night, after they left, I sat in the dark. The food remained untouched on the table. The sweets stayed covered. I felt foolish for trying so hard. Still, I told myself not to complain. A mother's job is to let go. That's what people say. But no one talks about how painful that letting go can be. My health started to change. Small things at first. Tiredness. Back pain. Trouble sleeping. I didn't tell him. I didn't want to worry him. When he called, I said, "Ai fine." Even when I wasn't. One afternoon, I slipped in the bathroom. Nothing serious. Just a fall. But I sat on the floor for a long time, unable to stand. My phone was in the other room. I remember thinking, if something happens to me now, how long would it take for anyone to notice? That thought scared me more than the fall. When I finally told him about it days later, he said, "You should be more careful, Ma." That was all. No concern in his voice. No questions. Just advice. The distance between us was no longer physical. It was emotional. Invisible, but heavy. I felt like I was standing outside a closed door, knocking softly. And no one was answering. One evening, I overheard something that stayed with me. I had called him, but he hadn't realized I was on the line yet. I heard his wife say, "She calls too much. It stresses you." There was a pause. Then my son said, "I know. I'll handle it." Handle it. Like I was a problem. My hand shook as I hung up. I sat there, staring at the wall. My chest felt tight, but no tears came. Just a deep, quiet hurt. After that day, I called less. Much less. I didn't want to be stress. I didn't want to be something he had to handle. Days passed without my voice in his life. And he didn't seem to notice. I started eating dinner alone every night. I stopped cooking large meals. There was no reason to. Sometimes I spoke out loud, just to hear a voice. I told myself stories from the past. Memories where I still mattered. I remembered him as a little boy, asking, "Ma, will you always be here?" I had said yes without thinking. Always. But I wondered if he remembered asking that. Deep inside, I felt something breaking. Not loudly. Not suddenly. Just slowly. Like a thread wearing thin. I didn't know it yet, but I was being prepared. Prepared for the moment that would finally change everything. The turning point did not come with shouting. It did not come with harsh words or anger. It came quietly, like most painful things do. It was a simple afternoon. I remember because the sun was soft and the house felt unusually still. That morning, I had gone to the doctor alone. My legs had been swelling and the dizziness was getting worse. The doctor spoke calmly, but his eyes were serious. "You need rest," he said, "and you shouldn't be alone so much." I nodded. I always nodded. He wrote some medicines and asked if someone would stay with me. I said yes. I don't know why I said. The distance between us was no longer physical. It was emotional, invisible, but heavy. I felt like I was standing outside a closed door, knocking softly, and no one was answering. One evening, I overheard something that stayed with me. I had called him, but he hadn't realized I was on the line yet. I heard his wife say, "She calls too much. It stresses you." There was a pause. Then my son said, "I know. I'll handle it." Handle it. Like I was a problem. My hand shook as I hung up. I sat there, staring at the wall. My chest felt tight, but no tears came. Just a deep, quiet hurt. After that day, I called less. Much less. I didn't want to be stress. I didn't want to be something he had to handle. Days passed without my voice in his life, and he didn't seem to notice. I started eating dinner alone every night. I stopped cooking large meals. There was no reason to. Sometimes I spoke out loud, just to hear a voice. I told myself stories from the past. Memories where I still mattered. I remembered him as a little boy, asking, "Ma, will you always be here?" I had said yes without thinking. Always. But I wondered if he remembered asking that. Deep inside, I felt something breaking. Not loudly. Not suddenly. Just slowly. Like a thread wearing thin. I didn't know it yet, but I was being prepared. Prepared for the moment that would finally change everything. The turning point did not come with shouting. It did not come with harsh words or anger. It came quietly, like most painful things do. It was a simple afternoon. I remember because the sun was soft and the house felt unusually still. That morning, I had gone to the doctor alone. My legs had been swelling and the dizziness was getting worse. The doctor spoke calmly, but his eyes were serious. "You need rest," he said, "and you shouldn't be alone so much." I nodded. I always nodded. He wrote some medicines and asked if someone would stay with me. I said yes. I don't know why I said that. Maybe because admitting the truth felt heavier than the illness. When I came home, I sat on my bed for a long time. The room felt larger than usual. The walls seemed far away. I picked up my phone. I hesitated. Then I called my son. He answered after a few rings. "Yes, Ma." I told him about the doctor. I kept my voice calm. I said I might need some help for a few days. There was silence on the line. Then he said, "I'll talk to my wife and let you know." Those words stayed with me. I'll talk to my wife. Not "I'm coming." Not "don't worry." Just, "I'll ask." Hours passed. No call back. Evening came. The sky turned orange, then dark. Finally my phone rang. His voice sounded careful, measured. "Ma," he said, "it's difficult right now." I closed my eyes. He continued, "We both work. And my wife feels it might be better if you manage on your own, or maybe find some help nearby." I held the phone tighter. I asked softly, "So, you won't come?" He hesitated. Then he said, "Not now." That was the moment. Not loud, not dramatic, but final. I thanked him. I don't know how the words came out. After the call ended, I sat very still. I felt something settle inside me, like acceptance, but colder. A few days later, they visited. Unexpectedly. I was surprised, but I smiled. I always smiled. They sat across from me in the living room. The air felt formal. Uncomfortable. His wife spoke first. "We've been talking," she said gently but firmly. "And we think it's best if you start being more independent." I listened. She continued, "You're strong, but too much emotional dependence isn't healthy." I looked at my son. He avoided my eyes. Then she said something I will never forget. "You should stop calling him so often. He has his own life now." I felt my chest tighten. I waited for my son to speak.
To say something.
Anything. But he stayed quiet. I end that silence. I understood. This was not just her decision. It was his too. I nodded. I said, I understand. Even though my heart was breaking quietly. After they left, I sat alone again. But this time, something was different. I didn't cry. I felt empty. Like a room after all the furniture is gone. That night, I took out an old box. It was filled with letters, school papers, drawings. Proof that I had once been everything to someone. I touched each one slowly. I remembered staying awake all night when he had a fever. Skipping meals so he could eat better. Holding his hand when he was scared. I whispered to myself. I did my best. No one answered. Days turned into weeks. Weeks into months. I stopped calling.
Completely.
I told myself this was dignity. But deep down it was pain trying to survive. He didn't call either. Not once. Not on my birthday. Not on festivals. Nothing. One afternoon, I received a message. It was short. Hope you are well.
No, ma. No words.
Just words. I stared at the screen. Then I turned the phone face down. That was the day I truly understood. He had not just forgotten me. He had placed me somewhere far behind. Out of sight. Out of mind. That I didn't hate him. I still don't. But something inside me changed forever. I stopped waiting. And in that quiet surrender, a strange strength began to grow. After that day, my life became very small. Not in a bad way. Just quiet. I stopped expecting the phone to ring. I stopped checking the door at night. I stopped planning my days around someone else's schedule. At first, it felt like giving up. But slowly, I realized it was something else. It was letting go. Mornings were the hardest. I would wake up early, as I always had. Out of habit. Out of years spent caring for someone else. I would make tea for two. Then remember. And pour the extra cup into the sink. I began taking short walks. Just around the neighborhood. I noticed things I had ignored before. The sound of birds. The smell of bread from the bakery down the street. The way sunlight touched the old trees. Life was still happening. Even without me being needed. Sometimes neighbors would ask, "Your son hasn't come lately?" I would smile and say,
He's busy.
Busy became my answer for everything. At night, I talked to myself.
Softly.
Like I used to talk to him when he was a child. I told myself stories. I reminded myself of who I was before I became only a mother. One evening while cleaning, I found an old photo. It was just the two of us. He was small, holding my finger, looking at me like I was his whole world. I sat down on the floor and held that picture for a long time. I did not cry. I felt proud. I thought, I raised a man strong enough to choose his own life. Even if that life did not include me the way I hoped. Weeks passed, then months. My body felt weaker sometimes, but my heart felt steadier. I learned how to cook simple meals for one. I learned how to sit with silence without feeling afraid. Then one day, I fell sick again. This time, it was serious. A neighbor found me weak and helped me to the hospital. I stayed there for a few days. No calls came. No messages. I was not angry. I was tired. While lying in that hospital bed, I thought deeply about love, about sacrifice, about expectations. I realized something painful but true. When you give your whole life to one person and make them your only world, you leave yourself with nothing when they walk away. That realization hurt, but it also freed me. After I returned home, I made small changes. I joined a local prayer group. I spoke to other women my age. Women with similar stories. Different details, same silence. We listened to each other. We understood, without explaining. That felt like healing. One afternoon, my phone rang. It was my son. After a very long time. "Ma," he said. His voice sounded older. "Are you okay?" I paused. I could have poured out everything.
The pain.
The loneliness. The nights I felt invisible. But I didn't. I simply said, "I fine." And I meant it. There was silence on the line. Then he said, "I should have called more." I waited. He didn't say anything else. I told him, take care of your life. He said okay. And the call ended. After that, I sat quietly. I felt a strange peace. Not happiness. Not sadness. Acceptance. I had stopped waiting for him to return to who he was. I had accepted who he had become, and for the first time, I chose myself. Today, my house is still quiet. The walls have not changed. The furniture is old. The memories remain. But I am different now. I no longer wait by the window. I no longer jump when the phone rings. If it rings, I answer. If it doesn't, I continue my day. I learned something late in life. But it is something every mother should hear. Love does not mean losing yourself. Sacrifice does not mean disappearing. When I was younger, I believed a good mother gives everything.
Her time.
Her dreams. Her health. Her voice. No one told me that one day, the child you build your life around will build a life that does not revolve around you. And that is not cruelty. That is life. I still love my son. That love did not fade. It simply changed shape. It is quieter now. Less demanding.
Less
Painful. Sometimes he calls. Sometimes he doesn't. When he does, I listen. When he doesn't, I pray for him. I do not blame his wife. She chose her life, just as I once chose mine. I do not blame him. He is doing what he believes is right. I only blame myself for forgetting that I mattered too. If you are listening to my story, and you are a mother like me, please hear this gently. Raise your children with love, but keep a part of yourself alive. Your joy matters. Your health matters. Your voice matters. Do not wait until silence teaches you that lesson. Now, when I sit alone, I do not feel empty. I feel full of memories, of strength, of lessons earned the hard way. I light a lamp each evening, not to wait for someone, but to remind myself that I am still here. And if one day my son walks through that door again, I will welcome him, not as a woman who waited, but as a mother who survived. Life does not always give us the ending we imagined, but it can still give us peace, if we allow it. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched your heart, know that you are not alone. Sometimes, the strongest love is learning how to let go without losing yourself.